Have you ever apologized for crying? Not because anyone asked you to. It just happened automatically. Have you ever noticed that? Nobody apologizes for laughing. Nobody apologizes for smiling. Nobody apologizes for getting excited. But tears always seem to come with an apology. Somewhere along the way, you learn that feeling deeply was something you should hide. So you blink faster. You look away. You change the subject. You tell people you're just tired. But what if you've been explaining the wrong thing your entire life? Psychology has uncovered something surprising. People who feel emotions more intensely aren't necessarily emotionally weaker. Their brains may simply be noticing things that other people never consciously see. Once you understand that, a lot of your life suddenly starts making sense. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt that something was wrong? Nobody was arguing. Nobody looked upset. Everyone kept talking. Then, 20 minutes later, someone finally admitted they weren't okay. Everyone acted surprised. You didn't. Somehow, you already knew. Not because you can read minds. Your brain was reading something else. A smile that arrived a little too late. A voice that sounded just a little flatter than usual. Eyes that looked away for only a second. Tiny details. The kind most people never consciously register. Imagine walking through a forest. Most people notice the trees. Some notice the wind. Others notice a single bird that suddenly stopped singing. The forest never changed. Only the amount of information each brain noticed. Your emotional world works the same way. You aren't creating extra feelings. You're detecting extra signals. When your brain receives more information, it naturally has more to process. That doesn't make you dramatic. It makes your experience different. Have you ever caught yourself asking, "Am I overthinking this?" Maybe. But maybe not. Because overthinking and noticing are not the same thing. One creates stories. The other notices patterns. The difficult part is that they often feel identical. That's why emotionally sensitive people spend so much time doubting themselves. Not because they're confused. Because everyone around them keeps insisting. You're imagining it. Sometimes you are. Everyone imagines things. But sometimes you notice something real long before everyone else did. Think about a conversation that everyone else forgot years ago. You still remember it. Not every word. Just the feeling. One sentence. One look. One awkward silence. You've probably asked yourself, why am I still thinking about this? Here's something fascinating. Your brain doesn't store memories like a security camera. It stores experiences. And experiences are built from emotion. Imagine writing on sand. One wave washes everything away. Now imagine carving into wet clay. The exact same movement leaves a much deeper mark. Nothing about the event changed. Only the surface receiving it. Highly emotional people often experience life like wet clay. Small moments leave larger impressions. Not because the moments were objectively bigger. Because the nervous system recorded them more deeply. That's why one careless sentence can stay with you for years. Not because you're weak. Because your brain decided, this matters. Sometimes you replay conversations because you're looking for something. You may think you're looking for closure. But often, you're looking for understanding. There's a difference. Closure wants the feeling to disappear. Understanding wants the feeling to make sense. Your brain keeps returning to the memory, not to punish you, but to finish processing something it never fully understood. It's like hearing the last line of a joke without hearing the beginning. Your mind keeps going back. Not because it's broken. Because unfinished patterns bother the human brain. Emotionally sensitive people simply stay with those patterns longer. Sometimes that's exhausting. Sometimes that's exactly how wisdom is built. Have you ever left a party feeling exhausted even though you barely talked? That doesn't seem logical. You weren't running. You weren't working. You were just standing there. So why does your battery feel completely empty? Because your body wasn't resting. It was reading. Every conversation. Every expression. Every change in someone's mood. Every awkward pause. Every laugh that sounded slightly forced. Imagine opening 20 tabs on your computer. Each one uses only a little memory. But together, the whole system slows down. Your brain works in a surprisingly similar way. Every emotional signal becomes another open tab. Most people automatically close them. Yours often stays open. Not on purpose. Automatically. By the end of the day, your nervous system isn't tired from being around people. It's tired from processing people. Those are two very different things. Have you ever cried while watching a complete stranger? Not someone you knew. Not someone you loved. Just someone on a screen. Maybe an old man finally found his lost dog. Maybe a little girl hugged her father after months apart. Maybe someone stood on a stage and thanked the teacher who never gave up on them. Your eyes filled with tears. For a moment, it felt like it had happened to you. Why? Nothing in your life changed. Nothing happened to you. And yet your body reacted as if it did. That doesn't seem rational. Here's the surprising part. Your brain doesn't only process your own emotions. It constantly simulates the emotions of other people. Imagine watching someone bite into a lemon. Sometimes your own mouth reacts. Not because you're eating the lemon. Because your brain briefly simulates the experience. Emotions work in a surprisingly similar way. When someone else feels something deeply, your nervous system quietly asks, "What would that feel like if it were me?" For some people, that simulation lasts only a second. For others, it becomes almost impossible to ignore. That's why emotionally sensitive people often cry during beautiful moments, not only painful ones. Kindness. Forgiveness. Hope. Relief. Gratitude. Your nervous system doesn't care whether the emotion is positive or negative. It simply recognizes that something deeply human just happened. And it responds. Here's something almost nobody talks about. Sometimes you don't even know why you're emotional. You just know something feels heavy today. Later, you realize someone close to you has been struggling. Or someone at work has been unusually quiet. Or your friend finally admits they've been pretending to be okay. Suddenly, everything makes sense. Your brain noticed the emotional weather long before your conscious mind understood it. Think about walking outside. Sometimes you can feel rain coming before the first drop falls. Not because you saw the clouds. Because your body noticed tiny changes in the air. Highly emotional minds often work the same way. They notice emotional pressure before anyone says a word. That's not magic. It's attention. Have you ever noticed that people open up to you surprisingly fast? Sometimes it's a stranger. Sometimes it's a coworker. Sometimes it's someone you've only just met. A few minutes later, they're telling you things they rarely tell anyone. Has that ever happened? Most people think it's coincidence. Psychology suggests something else. People can feel when they're being truly listened to. Not politely. Not patiently. Actually listened to. There's a difference. Most conversations aren't really conversations. They're two people waiting for their turn to speak. But when someone feels genuinely heard, their nervous system relaxes. That's when honesty begins. Highly emotional people often create that feeling without realizing it. Not because they always have the perfect advice. Not because they always know the right words. Because they don't rush. They don't interrupt. They don't immediately try to solve the problem. They stay curious. They stay present. And presence is becoming rare. In a world where everyone is looking at the next notification, giving someone your full attention feels extraordinary. Maybe that's why people trust you. Not because you're the smartest person in the room. Because, for a few minutes, you make them feel like they're the only person in the room. But there's a hidden cost. When people constantly bring you their emotions, you slowly begin carrying pieces of them, without even noticing. One friend's anxiety, another person's heartbreak, someone else's disappointment. None of it belongs to you. Yet somehow, you carry it home anyway. That's why emotional boundaries matter. A boundary isn't a wall. It's a filter. Imagine owning a beautiful house. You probably lock the front door at night. Not because you hate visitors. Because not everything belongs inside. Your emotional life works the same way. Compassion doesn't mean carrying every burden. It means caring without losing yourself. Learning that difference may be one of the healthiest things an emotionally sensitive person ever discovers. Now think about this. What if everything you've spent years trying to fix was never the real problem? What if your sensitivity wasn't something to erase? What if it was something to understand? Because once you stop fighting your own mind, you finally have enough energy to learn how it actually works. And that's where the biggest misunderstanding begins. Think about the strongest person you've ever met. Who comes to mind? Someone who never cried? Someone who never showed fear? Someone who always looked calm? That's usually how the world defines strength. Never break. Never react. Never let anyone see what you're feeling. But stop for a second. Is that really strength? Or is it simply emotional invisibility? Because hiding an emotion and regulating an emotion are completely different skills. One buries the feeling. The other understands it. Psychology has slowly moved away from the old belief that emotional control is the same as emotional health. Today, researchers focus on something much more important. Emotional flexibility. That sounds complicated. But the idea is simple. It means your mind can experience an emotion without becoming trapped inside it. Imagine a tree during a storm. One tree is completely rigid. It barely moves. From a distance, it looks powerful. But when the wind becomes stronger, it snaps. Another tree bends with every gust. Its branches move. Its leaves shake. When the storm passes, it's still standing. Your emotional life works the same way. Feeling deeply isn't what breaks people. Refusing to bend often does. Maybe that's why something has always confused you. You recover from painful moments, even after crying, even after feeling overwhelmed. The tears were never the failure. They were part of the recovery. Your nervous system wasn't giving up. It was trying to return to balance. That's a completely different story. Think about the moments that changed your life the most. They probably weren't the easiest ones. Maybe you lost someone. Maybe someone left. Maybe you failed. Maybe you had to say goodbye before you were ready. Those experiences hurt. But they also changed how you see the world. Emotion forces attention. Pain slows you down. Joy makes you fully present. Love changes your priorities. Grief changes your perspective. Every strong emotion tells your brain, this matters. Without emotion, most experiences quietly disappear. With emotion, some experiences become part of who you are. For years, you may have been asking yourself, why am I so emotional? But maybe that was never the right question. Maybe the better question is, what is my mind trying to show me? Those are very different questions. One assumes something is wrong. The other assumes there's something to understand. Think back to the beginning of this video. Remember apologizing for crying. Remember trying to hide how deeply you felt. Remember wondering why ordinary moments affected you so much. Now look at those moments differently. What if your sensitivity has never been asking to disappear? What if it has only been asking to be understood? Because people who feel deeply don't only experience more pain, they also experience more wonder, more gratitude, more compassion, more awe. They notice the message that arrives at exactly the right moment. The quiet act of kindness nobody else saw. The relief hidden behind someone's smile. The beauty inside ordinary moments that everyone else walks past. Sensitivity magnifies everything, not only suffering. Beauty too. And that's the part people rarely talk about. Imagine listening to your favorite song. Some speakers only reproduce the loudest sounds. Others reveal every tiny detail. The quiet piano in the background. The soft breath before the singer begins. The vibration of each string. Neither speaker is wrong. One simply reveals more. Maybe your emotional life works the same way. Maybe you aren't feeling too much. Maybe you've been hearing emotional frequencies that other people never noticed. So the next time someone tells you, "You're too emotional," don't rush to defend yourself. And don't rush to believe them either. Pause for a moment. Then ask yourself a better question. Am I reacting more than everyone else? Or am I simply noticing more than everyone else? Those questions may sound similar, but they lead to completely different lives. Psychology has uncovered something that many people never hear. Sensitivity is not the opposite of strength. Very often, it's where real strength begins. Not because sensitive people suffer more, but because they stay connected to the experiences that teach wisdom. Compassion, patience, understanding, human connection. Those lessons rarely come from avoiding emotion. They come from living through it. One day, you may stop apologizing for crying. Not because you'll stop crying, but because you'll finally understand what those tears were trying to tell you. They were never proof that something was wrong with you. They were proof that your heart never stopped paying attention. The world often mistakes emotional silence for strength. Psychology suggests something different. Real strength isn't about feeling less. It's about understanding what you feel. The people who understand emotions most deeply are often the people who never stopped allowing themselves to experience them. So if you've spent your life believing you were too emotional, maybe it's time to replace that label with a better question. What if you've never been too emotional? What if you've simply been paying closer attention to what it means to be human? The world changes when you understand people. Your life changes when you finally understand yourself.